Cutest couple of words.
Oh my gosh! Hi, good morning guys. Bonjour, Paris.
Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to the channel. Go ahead and like, subscribe, and all those other things cool YouTubers are telling you to do these days. If we've been following along here, if you're just tuning in, I have started a kind of expository breaking down Acts, kind of going chapter by chapter, different verses here and there, to really understand and be in tune with the understanding of what the church should look like. There's always a lot of back and forth as far as the church should be doing this, the church should look like that. No, the church doesn't do this, but the church does that. And so I think to kind of help bring this to a better understanding, instead of just tossing a bunch of hate out there on Facebook and in Twitter, is going back to the Word of God, going to the Scriptures and looking into that to understand what the church should look like, how the church should be operating. And so I'm focusing my attention on Acts, as that's how the church was initiated, how it started. Its origin is heavily based here within Acts. And so we talked about Acts chapter 1, talked about waiting, perimeno, that Greek word for waiting, perimeno, in Acts chapter 1, verses 4 through 6. I'll leave the link for that video down below. But now we find ourselves here in Acts chapter 2. And I know what you're thinking. Oh, goodness, he's getting ready to talk about Pentecost. Oh, wow, surprise. No, that's not it. What we're actually going to be talking about is that back end of Acts chapter 2, verses 41 through 47, on church growth. What was it that caused the church to grow? Because if you're familiar with Acts chapter 2, you know that Pentecost came, but then that back end of Acts chapter 2 is actually talking about church growth. So let me read that so you can gain a better understanding why it's related to church growth. And then maybe take a look at what caused the church to grow. So Acts chapter 2 verses 41. Those who believed what Peter said were baptized and added to the church that day, about 3,000 in all. All the believers devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship and to sharing in meals, including the Lord's Supper, and to prayer. A deep sense of awe came over them all, and the apostles performed many miracles, signs, and wonders. All the believers met together in one place and shared everything they had. They sold their property and possessions, shared their money with those in need. We're not going to be talking about Marxists, so breathe easy. They worshiped together at the temple each day, met in homes, at the Lord's Supper, and shared in the meals with great joy and generosity, all the while praising God and enjoying the goodwill of all the people, and enjoying each day and to their fellowship of those that were being saved. So, church growth. So we see here, verse 41, that about 3,000 in a day were added. And this was coming from all the preaching that Peter was doing in this time, during this time. He was preaching to those that had turned their back on Christ, and we kind of talked about that in the previous video in Acts chapter 1, as far as all these people that condemned Jesus, wanted to see him crucified. And now what we're seeing is a complete 180 for these people, and that they're repenting of their sin and then being baptized. They're believing Christ was a Savior, being baptized, and then believing. But there's a couple of different things that we see real repetitive here, that it begins with it and also ends with it. In Acts chapter 2, verse 42, or the beginning here, 42, all the believers devoted themselves to apostles' teaching and fellowship and in sharing in meals. And then this also closes with the same thing. They worshiped together at the temple, met in homes for the Lord's Supper, and shared in their meals in great generosity. So they call this bookended, right? So it starts with one direct story and correlation, and then ends with one. Bookends, right? To hold it all together to help you better understand what's happening here. So we've got to understand that what's happening. So they're meeting in larger numbers, and then they're meeting in smaller numbers. And then that back end of it, they're doing the same thing. They're meeting in the temple, church, and then they're meeting in each other's homes. So if we're wanting to look at the church here and now in Acts chapter 2, and then looking at the church here and now, which happens to be 2020, what is it that we should be applying if we're trying to understand that we want to be able to see the church grow and excel? We should be seeing two things. We should be seeing corporate worship, corporate teaching, and then also within the home or within cell groups, small groups, connect groups, whatever group, blank group happening, to be able to see church growth, to be able to develop community. That is something here that stuck out to me in Acts chapter 2. That we see that small groups was in the day of Jesus' time. And crazy to think is it actually carried on. Small groups wasn't just a thing that Rick Warren started or that your church started and they're doing these great things with connect groups. Now, I'm not trying to bash your church or anything that they're doing in regards to connect groups. What I'm saying is they haven't invented the wheel. All they've done is more so reinvented the wheel. Small groups is something that carried on from this time all the way up until about this, carried through this time and then kind of fell off and then did a resurgent back in the 1700s. So it came back, so small groups kind of fell off, and they were finally able to, because as you tear this apart, you understand that what's happening here is that the church, the early Christians weren't really able to meet in larger numbers, so it was a huge deal, or maybe a bigger requirement for them to be able to meet in homes. That's what helped allow that church to be able to grow and be able to develop disciples and so on. And so as the church grew and expanded, that you find that they're able to meet in larger numbers, as far as with how the Roman Empire took hold of the church and was able to build great churches that were directly in reflection of worshiping Christ. Versus when they were meeting in the temple, these temples were more so for Judaism, for the Jewish people. It wasn't for people directly worshiping the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, as far as who Christ was. That wasn't a reflection. They were able to put more emphasis on that when they're meeting in homes. And so it was almost kind of a requirement, and that kind of teetered off there a little bit and then made back a resurgent back in the 1700s. And then it fell apart a little bit again, and then it's coming back here and now, where small groups are a bigger thing than ever. So I encourage you, church leader, church planter, person looking for a church, that your church, if they're having some type of discipleship, they're having fellowship, then they should be meeting corporately, and they should be investing a lot of time and effort into small groups, connect groups, smaller groups, meeting within their homes, developing each other, worshiping and fellowshipping with each other within their homes. That is what's going to be able to help, for you church planters, help usher in church growth, help to be able to develop true community, and then people understanding what's happening in between there is, senses of awe, wonders and miracles and performance, all these great things happening, people sharing their lives together and connecting. That's the rich trueness there within that. So I think this is one of the key things that we're trying to put our attention, our focus to when we're going through Acts, as far as understanding the church, what the church should look like, how the church should be operating. So we see it here directly that we should understand that the church should have small groups. The church should be meeting corporately and then meeting within people's homes, meeting at coffee shops, wherever it is that a small group can congregate and worship the Lord, and then celebrating within meals, joys, even doing communion within the homes. These are things that we should be seeing the church doing today.